My parents held my hands in the pre-op room and promised they would be waiting for me. They swore they had the car pulled around back ready to take me home the second the anesthesia wore off. 6 hours later, I woke up with my abdomen stitched together, my throat raw from an intubation tube, and the visitor chair empty. I sat in a standard-issue hospital wheelchair near the automatic discharge doors for 4 hours. I watched the sun go down over the Tampa skyline. I watched the evening shift nurses clock out. My texts to my mother went from delivered to read to ignored. Then my phone died. They left me there. I had just undergone an invasive surgical excision, and my own family treated me like a forgotten umbrella. But the worst part was not the silence. It was what happened when the night charge nurse picked up my chart, read my mother's name, and turned white as a sheet. What she handed me an hour later made me realize my parents did not forget me. They left me isolated on purpose. Before I explain what was inside that dusty manila folder, please take a moment to like and subscribe to Elderly Stories. Drop a comment letting me know your age and where you are watching from right now. I always read through them. Let me take you back to that Tuesday night. I am 32 years old. I work as a freelance financial auditor. My job is to look at ledgers and find the missing numbers, the hidden debts, the lies people tell on paper. I have spent my entire life looking for patterns, but I somehow missed the pattern in my own family. My older sister Jessica was the sun our parents orbited. If Jessica had a bad day at work, my mother drove across town to comfort her. When I scheduled a necessary surgery to treat years of chronic pain, my parents sighed and asked if I could push it to the following month. They agreed to drive me only after I begged. The automatic doors at the hospital entrance open and close, letting in bursts of warm Florida humidity. It is 11 p.m. The pain medication is wearing off. Every breath pulls at my fresh incisions. A nurse walks over. Her name tag reads Sarah. She has kind eyes and a clipboard holding my discharge paperwork. She squats down next to my wheelchair. She asks if someone is coming for me. I shake my head. I tell her my phone is dead and my ride never showed up. She nods, keeping her expression professional. She flips to the second page of my file to check my emergency contacts. I watch her eyes scan the page. I watch them stop. Sarah goes perfectly still. She looks at the name Richard Mitchell. She looks at the name Evelyn Mitchell. The color drains from her face. She looks at me, studying my features under the harsh fluorescent lights. She asks for my mother's maiden name. I tell her. Sarah closes the folder. She does not offer to call me a cab. She does not offer to let me use the desk phone. Instead, she leans in close. Her voice drops to a whisper. She says she knows my mother. She says she remembers my mother from 26 years ago. Sarah stands up. She tells me not to move. She says she needs to go down to the basement medical records archive. She tells me there is something I need to see before I ever speak to my parents again. I sit in the quiet lobby, my surgical wounds burning, waiting in the dark, while a stranger unearths a secret my family thought they buried when I was 6 years old. The lobby clock ticks. The second hand sweeps in a slow circle. My abdomen burns with a tight, radiating heat. Every time I inhale, the fresh stitches pull against my skin. I sit in the wheelchair watching the sliding doors open for an ambulance crew, then close again. My mind races through a dozen scenarios. Did their car break down? Did they get the time wrong? I try to hold on to those excuses. I try to make them fit. But they shatter the moment Sarah steps out of the elevator. She carries a thick manila folder. The edges are frayed, the cardboard stained with decades of storage. It looks heavy. She does not walk over to the nurse's station. She bypasses the main desk entirely, pulling a plastic chair right up to my wheelchair. Her badge clinks against her stethoscope. She looks around the empty waiting area before looking at me. I ask her what that is. She places the folder on her lap. She keeps her hands resting flat on the cover. She asks if I remember anything about the year I turned 6. I blink, caught off guard by the question. I tell her I remember waking up in a hospital. I remember wearing a heavy brace on my right leg and having a cast on my arm. My parents always told me a drunk driver ran a red light on the interstate and hit our station wagon. They said the other driver fled the scene. They said I was lucky to be alive. That accident was the origin of the chronic pelvic and nerve pain I have carried my entire life. It was the reason I was on an operating table 6 hours ago. Sarah shakes her head slowly. Her gaze is steady, anchoring me to the reality she is about to expose. She tells me there was no other driver. 26 years ago, Sarah was a junior records clerk working the night shift. She processed the intake forms the night paramedics brought me in. She remembers the evening vividly because of my mother. Sarah describes Evelyn pacing the emergency room floor. She paints a picture of a woman not paralyzed by fear for her bleeding child, but frantic about the police arriving. Sarah tells me my mother smelled like cheap vodka and peppermint gum. Evelyn drove our car off an embankment on Route 60. She was intoxicated. My father arrived an hour later. He was a real estate developer with enough local influence to make the police report reflect a hit and run. They bribed the tow truck driver. They buried the truth to protect Evelyn from a felony conviction. My chest tightens. The air in the room suddenly feels too thin to breathe. I try to process the image of my mother risking my life and then erasing her crime. But Sarah is not finished. She taps her index finger against the cardboard cover. The cover-up is terrible, she says, but it is not the reason I brought this up here. She opens the folder. The top page is a faded photocopy of a legal settlement. The letterhead belongs to a recognizable insurance underwriter. Sarah turns the document toward me. She points to a paragraph halfway down the page. I lean forward, squinting through the lingering fog of anesthesia. The legal jargon is dense, but the numbers jump off the page. The insurance company settled a catastrophic injury claim to avoid a protracted lawsuit regarding the accident. The payout was finalized in a trust designated for my ongoing medical care, nerve damage rehabilitation, and lifelong support. I trace my finger over the bold ink. $2,400,000. I stare at the zeros. They blur together. I read the beneficiary line, Katherine Mitchell. I read the trustee line, Richard and Evelyn Mitchell. I look up at Sarah. My voice is barely a whisper. I tell her I have never seen a dime of this money. The reality of my life clashes against the paper in my hands. I am 32 years old. I drive a 10-year-old sedan with a cracked windshield because I cannot afford the deductible to fix it. I spent the last decade drowning in student loan debt, working 70-hour weeks auditing corporate ledgers just to keep my head above water. Every time I needed physical therapy for my lingering nerve pain, my parents told me they could not help. They said money was tight. They said I needed to learn to stand on my own 2 feet. Meanwhile, my sister Jessica lives in a gated community. My parents bought her a condo when she graduated college. They funded her lavish wedding. They drive luxury vehicles and take annual trips to the Bahamas. I always assumed it was simple favoritism. I assumed they just preferred Jessica. I never realized they were funding their entire existence with the settlement money meant for my broken body. I ask Sarah how they could hide this from me. She flips to the 3rd page in the stack. It is a bank transfer authorization form dated 7 years ago, exactly 1 week after my 25th birthday. According to the original terms of the trust, control of the funds was supposed to transfer directly to me when I turned 25. I look at the signature line at the bottom of the page. It reads Katherine Mitchell. The handwriting is a flawless imitation of my own. The loops are perfect. The slant is exact. But I never signed that paper. I never walked into that bank. On the date listed next to the signature, I was out of the state on a college accounting internship. Someone forged my name to transfer the entire balance of the trust into a private corporate account. Sarah watches the realization wash over my face. The betrayal shifts from a dull ache to a sharp, localized target. They did not just abandon me tonight because they are selfish. They abandoned me because of this money. Sarah leans closer, her voice urgent. She tells me to think about the timing. Why tonight? Why leave me isolated and stranded after a major surgery? They knew I would be pumped full of narcotics. They knew I would be disoriented, helpless, and desperate for assistance. Sarah warns me that whoever currently controls that corporate account needs something from me. People who steal millions of dollars do not ignore the victim by accident. They isolate the victim on purpose. They want me compliant. They want me confused. They want me exactly where I am, right now. My phone sitting dead in my lap suddenly feels like a brick. If I had called them from the hospital line, they would have made an excuse. They would have played the heroes swooping in to rescue the groggy daughter, using my vulnerable state to slide another forged document under my nose. The physical pain in my abdomen recedes, replaced by a cold, calculating clarity. I am an auditor. I track missing funds for a living. I unearth financial fraud for strangers. Now I am looking at the greatest fraud of my life, perpetrated by the people who gave me my name. I ask Sarah if I can keep the folder. She nods. She tells me she already made a copy for the hospital archives. This original file was flagged for destruction a decade ago during a digital transition, but it fell behind a filing cabinet. It was a ghost. Now it is a weapon. I thank her. I slide the heavy folder into my canvas tote bag. The weight of the paper presses against my side. I borrow her charger to plug my phone into the wall outlet near the automatic doors. I need to order a ride home. But more importantly, I need to see what my family has been doing while I was lying on an operating table. The screen flickers to life. The battery icon turns green. I brace myself for the onslaught of missed calls or fake apologies from my mother. I expect a text from my father claiming he fell asleep. I expect anything resembling guilt. Instead, the lock screen lights up with a dozen social media notifications. They are all tags from my sister. The trap they are setting for me is not just financial, it is public. And I'm walking right into it. The silver Toyota pulls up to the hospital entrance right as my battery reaches 2%. I slide into the back seat of the Uber, placing the heavy manila folder flat across my lap. The driver glances at me through the rearview mirror. He asks if the air conditioning is too cold. I tell him the temperature is fine. He puts the car in drive and we merge onto the quiet, late-night streets of Tampa. Every bump in the asphalt sends a sharp warning through my abdomen. The surgical glue holding my incisions together pulls tight with every subtle shift of the vehicle. I press my palm against my stomach, bracing myself against the physical reality of the procedure I just survived. But the physical ache is nothing compared to the cold weight of the cardboard folder resting on my legs. 20 minutes later, the driver pulls to a stop in front of my apartment complex. It is a faded stucco building sitting just off a noisy commercial avenue. There is no valet here. There is no gated entry. I thank the driver and step out into the humid night air. My unit is on the 3rd floor. The building does not have an elevator. I grip the metal handrail and begin the climb. Each step requires a precise negotiation with my battered body. I pause on the second landing to catch my breath. I look at the chipped paint on the railing and think about the $2.4 million my parents deposited into a corporate account 7 years ago. I think about the months I lived on rice and canned beans during my early accounting days. I think about the times I called my father asking for a small loan to cover a dental emergency, and he gave me a lecture on fiscal responsibility instead. I reach my door, turn the deadbolt, and step inside. The apartment is small and dark. The window unit air conditioner hums a low, steady rhythm. My furniture is a collection of thrift store finds and budget outlet sales. I drop my keys on the counter and sink onto the edge of my faded fabric sofa. I pull my charging cable from the end table and plug my phone into the wall. The screen brightens immediately. I sit back and wait for the barrage of excuses. I expect a text from my mother claiming she mixed up the discharge time. I expect a voicemail from my father saying his car broke down on the interstate. I am prepared for their standard brand of casual neglect. The notifications load. There are no missed calls from Evelyn. There are no texts from Richard. Instead, my screen is flooded with social media alerts. My sister Jessica tagged me in a photo album. Jessica is 36 years old. She has always functioned as the unofficial public relations director of the Mitchell family. When I was a child struggling through physical therapy to regain the feeling in my right leg, Jessica was winning regional beauty pageants. My parents polished her while they hid me. She married a man named Tyler who wears expensive watches and speaks exclusively in corporate buzzwords. They live in a pristine planned community and curate a flawless image of success. I open the application. The image on my screen hits me harder than the surgery. It is a photo of a luxury yacht docked in a Miami marina. The sky is a brilliant sunset pink. Jessica is standing on the teak deck wearing a designer silk dress, holding a crystal flute of champagne. Tyler is beside her, smiling with his arm around her waist. Standing right behind them, looking sun-kissed and relaxed, are my parents. Richard is wearing a crisp linen shirt. Evelyn is adjusting her expensive designer sunglasses. The timestamp shows the album was posted 3 hours ago. 3 hours ago, I was shivering in a hospital wheelchair asking the charge nurse if my mother had called. I scroll down to read the caption beneath the photo. The words are carefully crafted. They are designed to elicit maximum sympathy. Jessica wrote that her heart is broken. She wrote that they are trying to enjoy a family weekend, but the grief is heavy. Then she typed the sentence that changes everything. She asked her network to please keep our family in your prayers during this dark season because my sister is in rehab again. I stare at the glowing letters. The screen blurs for a fraction of a second before my focus snaps back. Rehab again. I have never set foot inside a rehabilitation center. I do not use illicit substances. I barely drink wine with dinner. I spent the last 6 hours in a sterile operating room, having endometrial tissue carefully excised from my organs by a licensed surgeon. The word again is the most dangerous part of her caption. It implies a history. It implies a chronic, ongoing struggle that my family has supposedly been managing behind closed doors. I scroll down to the comments section. The trap is already springing shut. There are dozens of replies from extended family members, former high school friends, and my parents' country club acquaintances. Aunt Linda left a row of praying hands saying she is so sorry Evelyn has to deal with this burden. A woman from my father's golf league commented that tough love is the only way to handle an addict. Jessica replies to almost every comment. She plays the tragic brave sister perfectly. She types that they had to cut contact for their own mental health. She types that hitting rock bottom is the only way I will learn. The sheer scale of the gaslighting takes my breath away. They did not just abandon me at the hospital to save themselves an inconvenience. They weaponized my medical isolation. My mind switches gears. The wounded daughter recedes into the background. The financial auditor steps forward. I look at the situation the way I look at a corrupt corporate ledger. People do not orchestrate a public smear campaign of this magnitude just for sympathy. A lie this big serves a specific structural purpose. If I wake up tomorrow morning, discover the truth about the stolen $2 million trust, and go straight to the authorities, what will happen? I will walk into a police precinct claiming my wealthy, respected parents forged my signature to drain my medical fund. The detectives will look into my background. They will see the public statements from my sister. They will read the comments from my aunt. They will look at me, a pale woman fresh out of a hospital, demanding millions of dollars that do not exist in my bank account. They will not see a victim of financial fraud. They will see a paranoid addict suffering from withdrawal delusions. They will view my accusations as a desperate attempt to extort money from my loving, exhausted family. The narrative is bulletproof. By framing me as an addict, they have preemptively destroyed my credibility. They have inoculated themselves against any truth I might try to expose. My extended family and professional network will simply pity my parents and ignore my claims. I set the phone face down on the coffee table. I look at the frayed manila folder Sarah gave me. You do not build a shield unless you are preparing for a battle. You do not discredit a witness unless a crime is about to be discovered. Jessica and my parents needed me silenced and discredited right now this exact weekend. I open the folder and pull out the bank transfer authorization form. I study the forged signature again. Below the signature is the routing information for the private account where my medical settlement was sent. It is registered to a limited liability company owned by Richard and Tyler. My family stole my past. Now they are constructing a narrative to steal my voice. But they made one crucial miscalculation. They assumed I would react with emotion. They assumed I would call them screaming, crying, and demanding answers, playing right into their depiction of a hysterical addict. I will not call them. I will not comment on the photo. I will not give them the erratic reaction they need to prove their story. Instead, I will do what I do best. I will follow the paper trail. I reach for my laptop resting on the kitchen counter. I need to open the state business registry. I need to find out exactly what Richard and Tyler are doing with that corporate account tonight. The answer to why they needed me discredited is hiding inside their financial filings, and I am going to find it before the sun comes up. I slide the heavy laptop out of my canvas work bag. The metallic chill of the device grounds me. I close the social media application on my phone and push the screen away across the coffee table. The wounded sister who wanted a ride home from the hospital is gone. She dissolved the moment I read that fabricated caption about rehabilitation. The woman sitting on the faded sofa right now is a forensic auditor. My breathing remains shallow and controlled. Every inhale pulls against the surgical glue binding my abdomen. I ignore the burning sensation. I compartmentalize the physical trauma. I have a corrupt ledger to tear apart. I open my internet browser and navigate to the Florida Division of Corporations website. The State Business Registry is an open public database if you know exactly where to look. I retrieve the frayed manila folder Sarah gave me at the hospital. I lay it flat on the table next to my keyboard. I trace my index finger over the 9-digit routing number printed beneath my forged signature. I type those numbers into the primary search bar. The database processes the query. A blue hyperlink appears on the glowing screen. The registered entity is listed as Pelican Bay Development Group. I click the link to view the official articles of organization. The initial registration date aligns perfectly with the month I turned 25. That was the exact window when the Catastrophic Injury Trust was scheduled to transfer into my legal control. The names listed under the Managing Partners section are Richard Mitchell and Tyler Cross. Tyler is my brother-in-law. He is a man who wears custom-tailored linen suits and speaks in relentless corporate jargon. He calls himself a visionary real estate developer. But Tyler has never actually built a single physical structure. He buys empty lots of Florida swampland. He prints glossy brochures for luxury condominiums and courts out-of-state investors. His projects always stall in the municipal permitting phase. The investors eventually cut their losses and pull out. Tyler simply moves on to the next ambitious pitch. He maintains the illusion of success through leased luxury vehicles and expensive country club memberships funded by other people. I pull up the associated tax filings and property records for Pelican Bay Development Group. I need to see where my $2,400,000 went. The financial rot unfolds across my screen in stark black and white columns. It is a textbook case of systematic asset depletion. They did not steal the funds in one swift move. They bled the trust dry over 7 long years. I find records of wire transfers categorized as vague consulting fees paid directly to Jessica. Those monthly fees align perfectly with her endless European vacations and designer wardrobe purchases. I uncover capital injections funneled into Tyler and his failing commercial real estate ventures. He used my medical settlement to prop up a fraudulent luxury high-rise project in Boca Raton. When that specific project went bankrupt 3 years ago, he used another heavy withdrawal to settle out of court with his angry investors. I click through the digitized bank reconciliation statements attached to the public filings. The balance of my life-changing medical settlement is entirely gone. The private corporate account currently holds less than $12,000. They drained the blood from my future to fund their daily vanity. A minor wave of grief washes over me, but I push it down deep into my chest. The money is missing. That is a concrete reality. But financial crimes of this specific nature rarely end with an empty bank account. Greed is a relentless machine that requires constant fuel. If Pelican Bay Development Group is effectively broke, why did they leave the company active? Why did they isolate me at the hospital tonight instead of just continuing to ignore my existence? I pivot my search parameters. I query the state database for recent Uniform Commercial Code filings associated with Tyler and his development company. A legal filing of this type is a public notice a lender submits when securing a commercial loan against business assets. The search results update. A new document was filed just 4 days ago. It is a formal application for a commercial bridge loan. A bridge loan is a short-term, high-interest financing option used to keep a sinking company afloat until permanent funding is secured. I open the digital document to review the terms. The loan principal requested is $3 million. The issuing lender is a regional commercial bank based right here in Tampa. I stare at the bright screen. My mind runs the variables. A regional bank does not hand $3 million to a limited liability company with a drained bank account and a documented history of failed real estate projects. Tyler and Richard have terrible credit histories. My father defaulted on a secondary residential mortgage last year. Tyler has a history of federal tax liens. They have no liquid assets left to pledge as collateral. The bank would require an airtight guarantor to approve a loan of this magnitude. I feel a cold knot form in my stomach. It is a different kind of pain than the surgical incisions. It is the realization of a much darker and more immediate threat. I open a new browser tab and log into my personal credit monitoring portal. I guard my financial health obsessively. I pay my credit card balances in full every week. I have 0 missed payments. My credit score sits in the top-tier percentile. I built my credit from nothing while they spent my settlement. The dashboard loads. A red alert flashes at the top of the interface. There are 3 new hard inquiries on my credit report. All 3 inquiries were initiated by the Commercial Lending Division of the exact regional bank listed on Tyler and his bridge loan application. They are not just stealing my past, they are actively framing my financial future. Tyler and Richard are using my pristine credit profile and the hollow shell of my medical trust as the collateral for their new $3 million debt. They listed me as the primary guarantor. If this bridge loan defaults, the commercial bank will not pursue my father. They will not go after Tyler. They will come directly for me. The debt collectors will seize my meager savings. They will garnish my auditing wages. I will be forced into personal bankruptcy before my 33rd birthday. They are setting me up to take the final fall for their entire house of cards. I scroll down to the final page of the loan application. The document status is listed as pending execution. The bank requires a final physical signature from the primary guarantor to release the $3 million into the corporate account. The pieces of the puzzle snap together with terrifying precision. The public smear campaign on social media, the deliberate isolation at the hospital, the narrative that I am a struggling addict returning to rehabilitation. They are building a psychological profile of an unstable woman who cannot manage her own legal affairs. They need my signature to close this commercial loan. But they know I would never willingly sign a debt guarantee for a brother-in-law I despise. They need to force my hand. They need me disoriented, medicated, and desperate for help. They left me stranded at the surgical ward hoping the physical trauma would make me weak enough to sign anything they put in front of me. I look at the digital clock on my kitchen wall. It is approaching 2 in the morning. My phone buzzes on the edge of the coffee table. The screen illuminates the dark room. It is not an alarm. It is a text message from Jessica. The message reads, "I am coming over tomorrow morning to check on you and help with your medical bills." She is not coming to bring me soup. She is not coming to comfort her wounded sister. She is coming to secure the final piece of their financial puzzle. She is bringing the loan paperwork disguised as a medical release. The trap is moving directly to my front door. I have less than 6 hours to prepare for her arrival. I close the laptop screen and sit in the quiet apartment. The silent audit is over. It is time to set a trap of my own. Morning arrives with a heavy, humid heat pressing against my apartment windows. The sunlight bleeds through the cheap plastic blinds, casting horizontal shadows across the living room floor. I have not slept a single minute. The surgical glue binding my abdomen feels tight and dry. Every time I shift my weight on the sofa, a sharp ache radiates through my lower stomach, reminding me of the physical trauma my body endured just hours ago. I push the pain aside. I have tasks to complete before the knock at the door. I close the state business registry tabs on my laptop. I power down the machine and slide it under a stack of old magazines on the bookshelf. I take the frayed manila folder containing the medical settlement records and hide it deep inside my bedroom closet beneath a pile of winter sweaters. I cannot leave any trace of my midnight audit visible. Next, I set the stage for my performance. I rumple the thin fleece blanket on the couch. I place 3 empty orange prescription bottles on the coffee table next to a tall glass filled to the brim with ice water. I put on an oversized faded t-shirt and pull my hair into a messy, uneven knot. I need to look exactly like the target they expect to find. I need to appear weak, disoriented, and heavily medicated. At exactly 9 in the morning, sharp footsteps echo in the exterior hallway. A quick, authoritative knock rattles my front door. I do not answer right away. I let her wait. I force her to knock a second time louder now before I slowly turn the deadbolt. Jessica stands on my welcome mat. She is a vision of curated perfection. She wears a crisp white linen pantsuit that looks entirely untouched by the Florida humidity. Her blonde hair is styled in flawless waves. She smells like expensive jasmine perfume and fresh espresso. The visual contrast between us is stark. She looks ready for a country club luncheon while I look like a hospital patient struggling to stand upright. She pushes past me into the apartment without waiting for an invitation. Her eyes sweep the modest living room, taking in the thrift store furniture and the buzzing window air conditioner. Her nose crinkles just a fraction. It is a microscopic expression of disdain, but I catch it. She holds up a small plastic pharmacy bag. She sets it on the kitchen counter with exaggerated care. "I brought you a care package," she says, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. I glance at the plastic bag. Inside is a generic bottle of ibuprofen, a single can of ginger ale, and a small bundle of wilted gas station carnations wrapped in cheap cellophane. My mind flashes back to the social media pictures from the night before. I picture her standing on the teak deck of a luxury yacht, drinking crystal flutes of champagne funded by my stolen medical trust. The sheer audacity of the wilted flowers is almost breathtaking. I lean heavily against the doorframe, playing my part. I let my eyelids droop. I slur my words just a fraction, asking her why Mom and Dad never showed up to the recovery ward. Jessica sighs. She walks over and places a manicured hand on my shoulder. Her touch feels like dry ice. "It was a terrible miscommunication," she lies smoothly. "Mom got the times confused, and by the time they called the ward, the nurses said you had already checked yourself out. They were sick with worry, Katherine. But you know how things get when you are in this state. Your memory gets blurry. You get confused. The gaslighting is seamless. She is planting the seeds of my supposed mental instability right to my face. She is building the narrative that I am an unreliable narrator of my own life." I nod slowly, pretending to accept her false reality. I shuffle over to the sofa and sink into the cushions, letting out a manufactured groan of pain. Jessica sits on the edge of the armchair directly across from me. She keeps her posture rigid, careful not to wrinkle her expensive trousers. "Mom and Dad feel awful about the mix-up," she continues. "They want to make things right. They know you are struggling financially. They want to cover all of your surgical invoices and out-of-pocket hospital costs." I keep my gaze unfocused. I murmur a quiet thank you. She reaches into her designer leather tote bag. The true motive for this unannounced visit finally materializes. She pulls out a stack of dense legal paper held together by a thick silver staple. She sets the documents on the coffee table right next to my glass of ice water. "Tyler spoke with our family accountant this morning," she explains, tapping her manicured fingernail against the top page. "In order for our parents to pay the hospital directly from the family trust, we need to route the invoices through Tyler's corporate office. This is just a standard medical proxy and financial release form. It lets Tyler handle the billing department on your behalf so you can just focus on resting." She reaches back into her bag and produces a heavy gold fountain pen. She holds it out to me. "Just sign the bottom line," she urges. "Then I will let you go back to sleep." I lean forward. I take the pages in my hands. I intentionally let my fingers tremble, mimicking the side effects of heavy narcotic painkillers. I blink rapidly, pretending to struggle with my vision. I look at the printed text. My trained eyes scan the paragraphs with clinical precision. I do not see a medical release form. I do not see any language regarding hospital billing or patient privacy rights. I see the statutory language of a broad, durable power of attorney. I read the specific clauses buried in the dense formatting. I see the phrase "grant of general authority," I see the clause authorizing the designated agent to bind the principal in contractual debt obligations. I see the section granting full authority over real estate transactions and commercial lending applications. The document names Tyler Cross as my legal attorney, in fact. If I put my signature on this line, I am handing them the keys to my entire financial existence. Tyler will take this notarized document straight to the regional commercial bank. He will execute the pending $3 million bridge loan using my pristine credit profile. He will mortgage my future without ever needing me to set foot inside the lending office. When his fraudulent real estate project inevitably collapses, the bank will bypass his empty corporate accounts and come directly to collect the debt from me. I hold the paper. My heart beats a steady, rapid rhythm against my ribs. I cannot refuse to sign the document outright. If I confront her right now, she will know I am lucid. She will realize I found the state registry filings. Richard and Tyler will panic. They will likely flee the state and drain whatever meager funds remain in the corporate accounts before I can secure legal intervention. I need to destroy this contract without revealing my hand. I keep the gold pen hovering over the signature line. I let my head loll slightly to the side. I tell Jessica my mouth is terribly dry from the anesthesia. I tell her I need a drink of water before I can focus on the letters. She sighs, an impatient sound escaping her throat. She tells me to hurry up because she has a lunch reservation. I reach my trembling left hand toward the tall glass of ice water resting on the coaster. I wrap my fingers around the condensation-slick surface. I lift the glass 2 inches off the table. Then I deliberately relax my grip. The heavy glass tips sideways. The rim strikes the wooden table with a sharp crack. A freezing wave of water and ice cubes floods across the coffee table, cascading directly onto the legal contract. The liquid saturates the thick paper instantly. The printer ink bleeds into dark, illegible gray streaks, ruining the text. The signature line dissolves into a wet puddle. Jessica leaps backward. Her designer heels scrape against the hardwood floor. The cloying, caring sister facade shatters in a fraction of a second. Her jaw clenches tight. Her eyes narrow into dark, furious slits. For 3 silent seconds, she looks at me with pure, unmasked hatred. The skin around her mouth turns pale with rage. She stands over me, her hands balled into tight fists at her sides. I look up at her, playing the bewildered victim. I apologize repeatedly. I tell her the medication is making me clumsy. I tell her my fingers just went numb. Jessica breathes heavily through her nose. She closes her eyes and forces the fractured mask back into place. When she opens her eyes, the rage is buried under a thin, brittle layer of fake patience. She snatches the soaking wet mess of paper off the table, holding it away from her pristine clothes. Water drips onto my rug. "It is fine," she bites out. Her voice is tight and strained. "I will have Tyler print fresh copies at his office." She turns toward the door. She does not offer to help clean up the spill. She does not ask if my incisions are hurting. She puts her hand on the doorknob and looks back at me over her shoulder. "I will return tomorrow morning," she says. "Do not take any more painkillers before I get here. We need to get this finalized." She walks out. The door clicks shut behind her. The apartment falls silent, except for the sound of ice cubes melting on the hardwood floor. I drop the act. My hands stop shaking. I sit up straight, ignoring the burning pain in my stomach. The stalling tactic worked, but it triggered a countdown. I have exactly 24 hours before Jessica returns with new forms, and likely my father to physically intimidate me into compliance. I cannot fight a multi-million-dollar fraud operation alone from a thrift store sofa. I need legal firepower, and I need it by sunrise. I wipe the melting ice from the hardwood floor using a thick towel. The damp cotton grows heavy in my hands. The physical exertion sends a fresh wave of stinging heat across my abdomen. I stand up slowly. The ticking clock Jessica started is deafening. I have less than a day before my sister returns with our father to force my signature. I cannot fight a coordinated financial syndicate using only a laptop and a thrift store sofa. I need a shield. I need a sword. I need an attorney. I walk into the kitchen and retrieve my hospital discharge paperwork. Tucked behind the post-operative care instructions is a small yellow sticky note. Sarah, the night charge nurse, wrote her personal cell phone number on the bottom corner before I left the ward. She told me to call if I found anything dangerous in the manila folder. I dial the 10 digits. The line rings twice before she answers. I do not waste time with pleasantries. I describe the forged bank transfer. I detail the pending commercial bridge loan and the durable power of attorney Jessica just tried to force me to sign. Sarah exhales a sharp breath over the receiver. She tells me to lock my deadbolt and stay away from the windows. She says she is bringing her brother. An hour later, a quiet knock sounds at my door. I look through the peephole. Sarah stands in the hallway next to a tall man wearing a tailored gray suit and carrying a heavy leather briefcase. I turn the lock and let them inside. Sarah introduces her brother David. He is a dual threat in the legal world. He holds a law degree and a certified public accountant license. He specializes in forensic asset recovery. David does not offer pity or empty comfort. He offers quiet competence. He asks me for a cup of black coffee and a flat surface to work. We gather around the small wooden dining table. I retrieve the frayed hospital archive file from my bedroom closet. I lay the forged documents next to David. He opens his briefcase and extracts a secure encrypted laptop. He connects to a private wireless hotspot. His fingers move across the keyboard with practiced precision. I watch his eyes scan the digitized records. I watch his jaw tighten. He pulls the federal tax returns for Pelican Bay Development Group using a specialized legal database. He cross-references the corporate filings with Tyler and his ongoing commercial real estate projects. The deeper David digs, the darker the financial picture becomes. The truth hiding beneath the ledgers is far worse than a simple theft. David turns the screen toward me. He points to a complex web of incoming and outgoing wire transfers. He explains the anatomy of the fraud. Tyler is not just a failed developer, he is operating a classic Ponzi scheme. David traces the money trail with his pen. Whenever Tyler pitched a new luxury condominium project, he collected millions in upfront capital from out-of-state investors. But he never used those funds to break ground or pour concrete. He used the new capital to pay off the previous group of angry investors who were demanding returns on older, stalled projects. He skimmed a heavy percentage off the top to fund his leased sports cars and Jessica and her designer wardrobe. When the influx of new investors eventually dried up, the pyramid began to collapse. That is when Richard and Evelyn offered up my medical trust as a sacrificial lamb. Tyler drained my $2,400,000 settlement to plug the holes in his sinking ship. Now even my stolen funds are gone. The entire Mitchell family is functionally broke. Their wealth is an illusion built on a foundation of stolen capital and federal wire fraud. The impending $3 million bridge loan is their final desperate gasp. They need my credit profile to secure the cash before the previous investors realize the corporate accounts are empty and alert the authorities. I ask David what happens if I take these files to the local police precinct right now. David shakes his head. He tells me white-collar criminals are like cockroaches when the lights turn on. If we tip our hand through a standard police report, the detectives will take days or weeks to secure a warrant. Richard and Tyler will use that window to run. They will shred the physical evidence. They will liquidate whatever remaining assets they possess, move the cash into untraceable offshore accounts, and flee the jurisdiction. My parents will leave me holding the bag for the fraudulent loans. We cannot expose them quietly, David explains. We must trap them in a corner where they cannot run and cannot spin the narrative. We need an inescapable public arena. He outlines the legal strategy. First, he will file an emergency ex parte injunction in federal court tomorrow morning. An ex parte order is a sealed secret motion. The judge will freeze all bank accounts associated with Tyler Richard and the development company. The bank freeze will happen invisibly. My family will not receive any notification until they try to swipe a credit card or wire funds. But the legal freeze is only half the battle. They have spent the last 12 hours painting me as a delusional addict to our entire social network. If I just freeze their accounts, they will use that false narrative to claim I am having a mental breakdown and attacking the family out of spite. They will rally the community to their defense and drag me through a brutal public relations war. I stare at the wood grain on my dining table. I realize David is right. Legal justice is insufficient if my family retains their social power. I must destroy their credibility in the exact same arena where they tried to destroy mine. I pull my phone from my pocket. I open the social media application and look at the yacht photo Jessica posted last night. I look at the dates on her previous posts. A specific memory clicks into place. I look up at David and Sarah. I tell them I know exactly where to execute the trap. This coming Saturday, Jessica and Tyler are hosting a lavish 10-year anniversary vow renewal. The event is taking place at the exclusive Tampa Bay Country Club. I know the venue. I know the guest list. Our parents invited every influential real estate developer, every local politician, and every high society contact they possess. I trace the connection in my mind. The ice sculptures, the string quartet, the premium champagne towers. Every single luxury planned for that evening was purchased using the stolen funds meant to heal my nerve damage. They are throwing a grand gala to celebrate their fraudulent success. I tell David about the guest list. The regional bank manager who approved the fraudulent bridge loan application is a VIP invitee. Tyler invited him to network with the other wealthy marks in the room. The strategy crystallizes. If we confront Richard and Tyler in private, they will deny everything. But if we spring the trap inside the country club ballroom surrounded by the exact investors they are defrauding, the illusion will shatter instantly. The regional bank manager will witness the forged documents firsthand. The authorities can walk right through the front doors and place them in handcuffs in front of their entire social circle. There will be no escape. There will be no spin. David nods slowly. He sees the tactical brilliance of the venue, a public execution of their pristine image. He agrees to draft the federal injunction paperwork tonight. He will contact a federal investigator he trusts to coordinate the timing. Sarah places a gentle hand on my arm. She asks the crucial question. She asks how I am going to get inside a highly secure country club event when my family currently believes I am a hostile threat recovering from surgery. The air in my apartment grows heavy. The answer is the most difficult hurdle of all. I cannot hide in my apartment for the rest of the week. If I go silent, Jessica and Richard will suspect I am building a defense. They will scramble their exit strategy. To keep them comfortable, I must convince them their psychological manipulation is working. I look at my phone. I must reach out to the woman who drove her car off an embankment and blame the shadows. I must text my mother. I have to play the part of the broken, compliant daughter seeking forgiveness. I must beg for an invitation to the viper nest. I pick up my phone. The screen glows in the dim apartment, casting harsh shadows across my face. I open the messaging thread with my mother. The last communication from her is a generic holiday greeting sent 7 months ago. Evelyn Mitchell operates on a very specific currency, and her absolute favorite currency is total submission. She feeds on apologies. I type the words, carefully crafting a message designed to bypass her defenses. I apologize for the miscommunication at the hospital discharge doors. I tell her the residual anesthesia clouded my judgment. Then I type the hardest sentence of all. I write that I am ready to admit I need help and I want to stop pushing the family away. It feels like swallowing glass. I press send. The digital bubble turns blue. She calls me within 10 seconds of my text delivery. I let the phone ring. I watch her name flash on the screen until it roots to voicemail. I cannot speak to her. My voice might betray the cold anger simmering in my chest. More importantly, I need her demands in writing. 2 minutes later, the text response comes through. I can picture her sitting on her pristine white leather sofa, holding her phone with manicured fingers, feeling a surge of triumphant validation. She does not ask how my incisions are healing. She does not ask if I have enough groceries to survive the week. Her reply is a calculated directive wrapped in faux concern. She tells me that actions speak louder than hollow apologies. She writes that Jessica is distraught over my recent erratic behavior. If I truly want to make amends, I must attend the 10-year anniversary vow renewal this Saturday. I must show the extended family and the country club guests that I am committed to a healthier path. She is using the party to parade her supposedly broken daughter in front of her social circle. She wants to display me as the troubled addict, solidifying her false narrative to the very people Tyler is trying to defraud. I type back a simple agreement. I will be there. The trap is baited. But springing this trap requires a physical toll I am barely equipped to pay. I walk into my small bathroom and look in the mirror. My skin is pale and drawn. Dark circles shadow my eyes. I pull up the hem of my oversized shirt. A thick, elastic surgical binder wraps tightly around my waist, holding my torn abdominal muscles together. I must attend a black tie gala looking like the polished daughter Evelyn demands. Evelyn spent my entire childhood treating my physical limitations as a personal embarrassment. When I wore a leg brace at age 7, she made me sit in the back row of family portraits so the metal hinges would not ruin the aesthetic. Now I have to squeeze a wounded, bleeding body into formal wear. I locate a dark navy gown in the back of my closet. I bought it on clearance 3 years ago for a corporate accounting dinner. The fabric is heavy silk. Stepping into the dress is an agonizing negotiation with my own anatomy. The zipper fights against the thick medical binder. Every twist of my torso sends a sharp warning firing through my raw nerve endings. I force the zipper up. I stare at my reflection. The dark fabric conceals the bandages, but the pain is a constant, suffocating presence. I swallow 2 ibuprofen. I cannot afford to look weak on Saturday. I must look like an auditor ready for a hostile board meeting. While I manage the physical reality, David manages the legal machinery. Thursday afternoon, my phone rings. David speaks in a low, steady cadence over the encrypted line. He just walked out of the federal courthouse downtown. The judge reviewed the evidence of wire fraud, the forged medical trust transfer, and the fake bridge loan application. The ex parte injunction is officially signed. The banking freeze is scheduled to execute precisely at 8 o'clock on Saturday evening. Tyler and Richard will have 0 warning. The moment the clock strikes 8, their corporate accounts, their personal checking balances, and their credit lines will lock tight. Any card they try to swipe will decline instantly. Any wire transfer they attempt will flag the federal system. The invisible cage is locked. Now I must build the ammunition for the social execution. I sit at my dining table with my laptop and a high-yield laser printer I borrowed from a neighbor. I do not just want to tell the country club audience about the theft. I want them to read it. I want the regional bank manager to hold his own ruined career in his hands. I purchase 5 sleek black presentation folders from a local office supply store. The printer hums, spitting out warm sheets of paper. The smell of fresh toner fills the small living room. I open the first folder. I slide in a high-resolution color printout of the yacht photo Jessica posted on social media, complete with the caption claiming I am in rehabilitation. Behind that lie, I place the truth. I insert the official hospital discharge summary proving I was undergoing endometriosis excision surgery at the exact moment she claimed I was battling addiction. Next, I print the bank transfer authorization from 7 years ago. I highlight the forged signature in bright yellow ink. I place a legitimate copy of my state identification card on the opposing page so anyone can compare the handwriting. The loops and slants are exposed as fraudulent to the naked eye. Then I print the state business registry documents. The LLC tax returns showing a 0 balance. The pending $3 million commercial bridge loan application listing me as the guarantor. I build a chronological narrative of their financial rot. I compile 5 identical dossiers, one for Richard, one for Evelyn, one for Jessica, one for Tyler, and one specifically assembled for the regional banking executive who approved their fraudulent paperwork. I stack the black folders on the edge of my desk. They are dense. They are undeniable. The preparation is complete. The legal freeze is active. The evidence is bound in leather. But my body is failing the timeline. As I press down on the edge of the final folder, a sudden wave of nausea hits me. I grip the edge of the wooden table to steady myself. The room tilts. A localized burning sensation erupts along the lower left side of my abdomen. It is not the dull ache of healing tissue. It is a sharp, radiating heat. I place my hand over the surgical binder. The fabric feels uncharacteristically warm to the touch. A fever is setting in. The intense stress and physical exertion of the last 48 hours have pushed my compromised immune system past its breaking point. I look at the digital clock on the stove. It is Friday night. The vow renewal is less than 24 hours away. If I collapse now, Richard and Tyler will force my signature, finalize the bridge loan, and disappear. I grab my car keys. I have to make it to an urgent care clinic before the infection spreads to my bloodstream. The drive to the late-night urgent care clinic requires intense concentration. My hands grip the leather steering wheel. The knuckles turn white. My vision blurs around the edges from the rising fever. The streetlights of Tampa streak across the windshield in long yellow lines. Every pothole I hit sends a jolt of pure agony through my lower abdomen. The surgical binder wrapped around my torso feels like a cage of hot iron. My body is failing me at the exact moment I need it to be invincible. I park the sedan in the mostly empty asphalt lot. The clinic entrance glows with a harsh, sterile white light. I walk through the sliding glass doors. The receptionist takes my insurance information without making eye contact. The waiting area is silent except for the low hum of the vending machine in the corner. I sit in a rigid plastic chair. I close my eyes and focus on my breathing. Inhale for 4 seconds. Exhale for 4 seconds. I cannot afford to panic. I must treat this medical hurdle the same way I treat an unbalanced corporate ledger. I need to isolate the discrepancy and apply the correct solution. A triage nurse calls my name. She guides me into a small examination room that smells sharply of rubbing alcohol and bleached cotton. A tired physician enters a few minutes later. He wears faded blue scrubs and a stethoscope draped around his neck. He asks me to lift the hem of my shirt and loosen the elastic binder. I comply. He examines the primary incision site. He confirms my suspicion. The perimeter of the surgical wound is angry and red. An early-stage localized infection is taking root in the inflamed tissue. The stress and physical exertion of the past 48 hours severely compromised my cellular recovery. The doctor prescribes a heavy dose of broad-spectrum oral antibiotics and administers an immediate intramuscular injection to jumpstart the healing process. He tells me I need strict bed rest for the next 3 days. He says pushing my physical limits could land me back in the hospital with sepsis. I nod, thanking him for his expertise, but I know I will disregard his advice the moment I walk out the door. Bed rest is a luxury I cannot afford. He leaves the room to process my discharge paperwork. I am left sitting alone on the crinkling paper of the examination table. The antibiotic shot burns deep in my muscle. A heavy wave of exhaustion washes over me. It is not just the physical toll dragging me down. The emotional weight of the impending weekend crashes into my chest. I look at my pale reflection in the small mirror mounted above the sink. I look fragile. I look tired. For a fleeting minute, a dangerous seed of doubt takes root in my mind. I ask myself if I am truly capable of doing this. I ask myself if I possess the inherent cruelty required to obliterate my own blood relatives. If I walk into the country club tomorrow night and execute David's plan, the destruction will be permanent. Richard will likely face federal prison time for wire fraud. Tyler will be indicted. Evelyn will lose her pristine social standing and face total public humiliation. Jessica will be stripped of her luxury lifestyle and forced into financial ruin. The fallout will be catastrophic. I am about to detonate a bomb in the center of my family tree. A quiet, insidious voice whispers in the back of my mind. The voice suggests I should just let the federal banking injunction do the dirty work silently. The voice suggests I should stay home tomorrow night, sleep off the infection, and let the authorities handle the messy details. I could walk away. I could save myself the trauma of looking them in the eyes while their empire collapses. I reach into my canvas tote bag resting on the adjacent chair. I pull out my phone. I open the messaging application. I scroll to the text exchange with my mother from earlier this evening. I force myself to read her words again. I stare at the sentences she typed while sitting in her pristine home funded by my stolen settlement. I look at the specific phrase she used to describe me to our extended family: addict. She branded me with a label designed to strip away my humanity. She used my agonizing surgical recovery as a convenient excuse to paint me as a broken liability. My parents did not hesitate to destroy my reputation to protect their stolen wealth. They threw me to the wolves without a single shred of remorse. They watched me struggle to pay for groceries while they drank imported champagne on a chartered yacht. They forged my signature to steal my future. The seed of doubt withers and dies. Empathy requires a mutual exchange of humanity. My family abandoned their humanity 26 years ago when a drunk driver pulled a bleeding child out of a wrecked station wagon and decided to cover up the crime. The feverish haze in my mind clears. The antibiotic injection begins to dull the localized sting of the infection. The cold, calculating auditor returns to the surface. I am not detonating a bomb out of malice. I am balancing a ledger that has been corrupt for decades. I am delivering the consequences they purchased. I leave the urgent care clinic and drive to the 24-hour pharmacy down the street. I collect my oral prescription. I purchase a box of sterile bandages and a tube of topical antibiotic ointment. I drive back to my apartment complex. The night air remains thick and suffocating, but my internal temperature is finally stabilizing. I climb the 3 flights of stairs to my unit. The journey hurts less than it did this afternoon. I unlock the door and walk straight into the kitchen. I swallow the first large antibiotic pill with a glass of tap water. I move to the dining table. The 5 sleek black presentation folders sit in a neat stack waiting for final assembly. I pull up the rolling desk chair and sit down. I open the first folder. I verify the contents one last time. The photograph of the yacht. The false social media caption. The hospital discharge summary proving the surgery. The forged bank transfer authorization form from 7 years ago. The state identification card showing my real handwriting. The corporate tax returns proving the shell company is broke. The pending commercial bridge loan application containing federal wire fraud. Every piece of paper is a nail in their coffin. I take a label maker from my desk drawer. I type the name Richard Mitchell. The machine whirs and spits out a small white adhesive strip. I peel the backing away and press the label onto the top right corner of the first black folder. I repeat the process. Evelyn Mitchell, the matriarch who orchestrated the original cover-up and demanded my compliance. Jessica Cross, the golden sister who served as the smiling public relations director for a criminal syndicate. Tyler Cross, the arrogant brother-in-law who treated my medical trust like a personal venture capital fund. I pick up the final folder. This one is the linchpin of the entire operation. I type the name of the regional banking executive. He is the VIP guest attending the vow renewal tomorrow night. He is the man holding the keys to the $3 million loan. When he opens this specific dossier, he will see the irrefutable proof that his esteemed country club friends are attempting to defraud his institution using stolen identity metrics. He will become the immediate catalyst for their ruin. I press his printed name onto the dark leatherette cover. I stack the 5 completed dossiers in a perfect uniform column. I align the edges until they form a flawless block of paper and cardboard. They sit on the wooden table like dormant artillery shells. I walk over to the sofa and lie down, pulling the thin fleece blanket over my shoulders. I close my eyes. The fever is breaking. My mind is quiet. The hesitation is gone. The weapons are loaded. The trap is set. All I have to do now is wait for the sun to rise and put on a dark navy gown. Tomorrow evening, the Mitchell family will host the most expensive party they will ever attend, and I am going to burn it to the ground. The valet opens the door of my 10-year-old sedan. The crisp evening air of Tampa Bay carries the scent of salt water and expensive jasmine perfume. I step onto the pristine cobblestone driveway of the country club. The heavy silk of my navy gown conceals the thick medical binder wrapped around my torso. The oral antibiotics I swallowed hours ago have suppressed the fever, but a dull hum of pain still radiates from my surgical incisions. I ignore the physical discomfort. I grip the leather straps of my black tote bag. Inside the bag sit the 5 finalized dossiers. I walk through the towering mahogany front doors into the main ballroom. The opulence is visually staggering. A live string quartet plays a classical arrangement in the corner. Waiters in crisp white tuxedos circulate with silver trays bearing towers of crystal champagne flutes. In the center of the room, a towering ice sculpture shaped like two interlocking swans catches the light of the crystal chandeliers. Every floral arrangement, every imported bottle of wine, every tailored suit in this room was purchased with the funds meant to heal my childhood nerve damage. They took my blood and turned it into an anniversary gala. I do not make it 10 steps past the coat check before the perimeter defense activates. My mother materializes from the crowd. Evelyn wears a stunning emerald gown that likely cost more than my vehicle. She has spent her entire adult life curating an image of flawless upper-class grace. She glides toward me with a tight artificial smile plastered across her face. She does not offer a greeting. She does not ask about my health. She closes the distance and grabs my right arm. Her grip is sudden and surprisingly strong. Her manicured acrylic nails dig deeply into my bare skin, pressing hard enough to leave dark purple bruises. She pulls me close until I can smell the sour tang of vodka masking her expensive breath. Her voice drops to a lethal whisper. She tells me to listen very carefully. She says I am here on a trial basis. If I act out of line tonight, she will not hesitate. If I show a single symptom of what she calls my erratic withdrawal behavior, she has instructed the private security detail to physically drag me out the service entrance. She warns me not to embarrass this family in front of their colleagues. I look down at her hand gripping my arm. Years ago, that grip would have paralyzed me with anxiety. Tonight, it just feels pathetic. I maintain my clinical detachment. I do not flinch, I do not pull away, I simply nod, giving her the exact submission she craves. Her fake smile widens. She releases my arm and vanishes back into the sea of wealthy guests, believing she successfully neutralized the threat. I move toward the edge of the ballroom, staying close to the velvet-draped walls. I observe the predators in their natural habitat. Jessica stands near the main stage, playing the role of the radiant bride. She wears a custom beaded gown, laughing loudly at a joke someone made, tossing her blonde hair over her shoulder. Guests line up to hand her expensive gifts and envelopes of cash. She accepts them with practiced humility, absorbing the attention like a sponge. Across the room, Tyler is executing his portion of the strategy. He wears a custom-tailored tuxedo, glad-handing a group of older gentlemen. Tyler relies on charisma to mask his incompetence. I watch him pat a man on the back and hand over a glossy business card. He is hunting for fresh capital. He is trying to secure new victims for his Ponzi scheme before the older investors realize the corporate accounts are hollow. Then I spot the primary target. Standing near the patio doors, holding a glass of scotch, is the regional bank manager. He is an older man with silver hair and a stern face. Richard is standing right next to him. My father leans in close, speaking with animated confidence, pointing toward Tyler across the room. Richard is laying the final groundwork. He is selling the illusion of the Mitchell family wealth, ensuring the bank manager feels secure about the pending $3 million commercial bridge loan. The tension in the ballroom is suffocating. It is a room built entirely on lies, and I am the only person holding the truth. I know exactly how this evening is designed to unfold. Tyler and Richard will not wait until the party ends. They need my signature on the fresh power of attorney documents tonight. They plan to use the loud, chaotic environment of the gala to corner me. They will separate me from the crowd, pull me into a secluded side room, and use physical intimidation to force my hand, while the string quartet drowns out any protest. I must control the battlefield before they dictate the terms of engagement. I survey the layout of the large room. The event planners installed a massive projector screen behind the main stage, designed to display a slideshow of Jessica and Tyler over their 10-year marriage. To the left of the stage sits a small audiovisual control table. The technician is currently distracted. He is up on the stage adjusting the height of the main microphone stand for the upcoming toasts. The control table is temporarily abandoned. I walk casually toward the front of the room, blending in with the guests migrating toward the buffet stations. I slip behind the black curtain shielding the audiovisual equipment. The setup is standard. A high-end laptop connects to the ceiling-mounted projector via a single digital cable. I reach into my tote bag and pull out my phone. I already uploaded the digital scans of the forged bank transfers, the LLC bankruptcy filings, and the true hospital discharge records into a single presentation file. I retrieve a small adapter cable from my purse. My hands do not shake. The fever is gone. The auditor is at work. I unplug the primary display cable from the venue laptop and connect it directly to my adapter. I plug the adapter into my phone. A small green light blinks on the connection hub, indicating a successful handshake between my device and the overhead projector. I tap the screen mirror function. I do not open the presentation file yet. I leave the display showing a blank black screen seamlessly blending in with the dark backdrop of the stage. The trap is armed. The execution mechanism is now sitting in the palm of my hand. I step out from behind the velvet curtain and merge back into the crowd. I am ready. The physical pain in my abdomen fades into the background, replaced by the cold adrenaline of impending justice. I catch Richard staring at me from across the room. He ends his conversation with the bank manager and taps Tyler on the shoulder. They both turn their gaze toward me. The predatory shift in their posture is undeniable. They think the trap is set for me. They begin walking in my direction, their faces set in grim determination. The confrontation is no longer theoretical. It is walking right toward me, holding a gold pen and a stack of fraudulent legal papers. I watch them navigate the crowded ballroom. Richard and Tyler move with synchronized purpose. They weave past the tuxedo-clad waiters and the glittering ice sculptures. Their eyes remain locked on my position near the velvet curtains. I do not retreat. I do not search for an exit. I stand my ground and wait for them to close the distance. They flank me on either side. Tyler steps close to my left shoulder. Richard mirrors him on the right. They orchestrate the maneuver to look like two concerned family members checking on a recovering patient. To the wealthy guests sipping champagne nearby, we probably look like a picture of familial devotion. Richard leans down. His voice is a low, gravelly hum designed to carry no further than my ear. He tells me it is time to handle our private business. He places a heavy hand on the small of my back. He guides me away from the bright chandeliers and the melodic string quartet. He steers me toward a dark paneled hallway near the catering kitchens. We reach a heavy oak door marked private. Tyler turns the brass knob and pushes the door open. It is the country club manager office. Richard shoves me inside. Tyler follows close behind and clicks the deadbolt locked. The heavy wood severs the sound of the party. The music fades into a muffled vibration against the floorboards. The office is cold. It smells of leather polish and stale cigars. A large mahogany desk dominates the center of the room. A single brass lamp casts a harsh pool of yellow light across the polished surface. Tyler drops his false charisma the second the lock engages. He looks frantic. A thin sheen of sweat coats his forehead, ruining his curated aesthetic. He reaches inside his tailored suit jacket and pulls out a thick stack of folded legal paper. He slaps the documents onto the center of the mahogany desk. He tosses a gold fountain pen right beside them. The documents are fresh copies of the durable power of attorney. Richard stands between me and the locked door. My father built his entire real estate career on intimidation. 26 years ago, he used his physical presence and his wealth to silence the police officers evaluating a wrecked station wagon. He bribed a tow truck driver while his 6-year-old daughter bled in the back seat. He has never faced a consequence he could not bully into submission. He assumes I will crumble under his shadow. My father drops the concerned parent facade. His features harden into a mask of pure contempt. He does not ask how my surgical incisions are healing. He does not ask if I am comfortable. He issues an ultimatum. Richard tells me I am going to pick up the pen and sign the bottom line on every single page. He says the bank requires the paperwork by Monday morning and he is tired of playing games with a pathetic, ungrateful child. I keep my posture rigid. I look at the legal contract resting in the pool of yellow light. I ask him what happens if I refuse. Richard takes a slow step forward. His dress shoes tap against the hardwood floor. He outlines his threat with chilling precision. He explains that Florida law allows family members to petition for an involuntary psychiatric hold. He tells me that he, Evelyn, and Jessica are fully prepared to sign sworn affidavits stating I am a severe danger to myself. He reminds me of the social media narrative they spent the last 24 hours building. He says every person out in that ballroom already believes I am an unstable addict suffering from surgical painkiller withdrawal. If I do not sign the contract tonight, my father promises to call the authorities. He promises to have paramedics strap me to a gurney and transport me to a state rehabilitation facility. He says he will use my designated medical incompetence to secure an emergency guardianship. He will take legal control of my life and sign the banking documents himself. He thinks he has cornered a wounded animal. He does not realize he just handed me the final piece of evidence required to authorize a federal indictment. I slide my right hand into the side pocket of my dark navy gown. My fingers trace the smooth edge of my phone. I locate the external volume button. I programmed a shortcut into the device before I left my apartment. 2 quick taps on the side button initiate a hidden audio recording application. I press the button twice. A microscopic vibration pulses against my palm, confirming the microphone is capturing the room. I ask him to clarify his statement. I want his extortion recorded in high-definition audio. I ask if he is threatening to fabricate a medical crisis to force my signature on a commercial loan guarantee. Tyler runs a shaky hand through his styled hair. He barks at me to stop asking stupid questions. Tyler says the family is carrying immense financial burdens, and I owe them this signature for keeping a roof over my head during childhood. He taps the gold pen against the mahogany wood, demanding I finalize the paperwork so they can return to their wealthy investors. Richard steps even closer. His chest almost brushes my shoulder. He tells me I have 10 seconds to pick up the pen, or he is dialing the emergency dispatch line to report a manic episode. I pull my hand out of my pocket. I step toward the heavy mahogany desk. I look at Tyler. I look at Richard. I let out a long, defeated sigh, playing the role of the broken daughter surrendering to the inevitable. I reach out and pick up the heavy gold fountain pen. The metal feels cool against my skin. Tyler exhales a loud breath of relief. He leans over the desk, hovering right beside my elbow. He points his finger at the blank signature line at the bottom of the final page. I remove the cap from the pen. I place the nib against the thick paper. I do not rush. I channel every ounce of my professional auditing training. I keep my handwriting steady, precise, and entirely legible. I write my first name, Katherine. I write my last name, Mitchell. Then I continue writing outside the designated box. I drag the pen across the bottom margin of the legal contract. I write 4 additional words in bold, unmistakable letters. Under duress and fraud. I place the cap back on the gold pen. I set it down on the desk with a soft click. Tyler snatches the paperwork the instant my hand pulls away. He lifts the document toward the brass lamp to inspect the wet ink. He expects to see a clean legal authorization. Instead, his eyes track across the damning sentence I just permanently attached to his fraudulent loan application. The color instantly drains from his face. His jaw drops open. He stares at the ink as if the words are written in poison. The realization hits him like a physical blow. A legal contract signed with an explicit declaration of duress is worse than worthless. It is a documented confession of coercion. He realizes I am not groggy. He realizes I am not confused. He realizes I know exactly what they are trying to steal. Tyler stammers. He shoves the paper toward Richard. His voice cracks into a high-pitched panic. He points at my signature and tells my father to look at what I just did. Richard grabs the paper. He reads the ink. The veins in his neck bulge against his crisp white collar. His face flushes a dark, dangerous purple. The calculating manipulator vanishes, replaced by a man realizing his empire is turning to ash. He crumples the legal document in his fist. He drops the paper onto the floor. He pivots toward me, his hands curling into tight fists. He lunges forward, attempting to grab my shoulders. He wants to physically pin me against the wall. He wants to use violence to restore his control. But I am already moving. I anticipated his physical reaction the moment the pen touched the paper. I sidestep his lunge. The surgical incisions in my abdomen scream in protest, but the adrenaline overrides the pain. I pivot around the edge of the mahogany desk, placing the heavy furniture between his body and mine. I reach the heavy oak door. I grip the brass deadbolt and twist it hard to the left. The lock clicks open loud and sharp in the quiet room. Richard shouts my name. He scrambles around the desk, his heavy shoes slipping on the polished hardwood floor. Tyler is frozen in place, staring at the crumpled paper on the rug, realizing the $3 million lifeline is dead. I pull the door wide open. The symphonic music of the string quartet and the chatter of the wealthy guests wash over me. The bright light of the crystal chandeliers floods into the dark office. I step backward across the threshold. I cross the boundary from the isolated trap back into the public arena. I leave the door wide open behind me, exposing them to the passing waiters and the lingering guests. Richard stops dead in his tracks just inside the door frame. He cannot chase me into the hallway. He cannot scream or grab me in front of the catering staff. He is trapped by his own desperate need to maintain his public image. I look at them one last time. Tyler is hyperventilating near the desk. Richard is glaring at me with raw, unfiltered hatred. They are trapped in a panicking silence. I turn my back on the dark office. I adjust the strap of my tote bag. I walk toward the center of the ballroom. The private extortion has failed. The public execution is about to begin. The private hallway sits in quiet contrast to the vibrant gala. I leave the heavy oak door open behind me, exposing the manager office to the passing catering staff. The scent of roasted tenderloin and expensive champagne hangs heavy in the ballroom air. Guests are finding their assigned seats at the circular dining tables. The live string quartet finishes their classical arrangement, yielding the floor to the evening program. The master of ceremonies taps a crystal glass, calling for attention. I glide along the perimeter of the room. My dark navy gown sweeps against the patterned carpet. The surgical binder beneath my silk dress pulls at my tender skin with every step. I focus my gaze on the grand stage rising at the front of the venue. Jessica ascends the carpeted steps. She captures the spotlight effortlessly. Her beaded gown catches the illumination, cascading from the chandeliers overhead. My sister was born for the center stage. While I spent my youth navigating hospital waiting rooms, reading outdated magazines with a heavy leg brace, she attended etiquette classes and theatrical camps. She learned how to modulate her vocal pitch to project vulnerability. She knows exactly how to manipulate an audience. Jessica holds the silver microphone. A soft hush falls over the crowd. She begins speaking. Her tone is melodic, laced with a calculated tremble. She welcomes the distinguished guests, the investors, the local politicians. Then she pivots to the core theme of her presentation. She talks about the enduring bond of kinship. She describes the trials her marriage endured over the past decade. She credits her success to the unwavering pillar of support provided by our parents. She pauses to wipe a non-existent tear from her cheek. She looks at the front VIP table where Evelyn sits, dabbing her eyes with a linen napkin. Jessica claims that weathering storms requires a village. She tells the audience that true wealth is not measured in real estate portfolios or bank accounts, but in the devotion of those who stand by you during dark seasons. The hypocrisy is a physical weight in the room. She is lecturing a crowd of millionaires about loyalty, while her husband panics in a locked office because he cannot steal my identity. She is preaching about devotion, while standing on a stage paid for by my shattered childhood nerves. I do not wait for the applause. I step out from the shadows. I walk down the central aisle, bisecting the sea of dining tables. My posture is rigid, straight, and uncompromising. The pain in my abdomen tries to force a limp, but I refuse to yield. I place one heel in front of the other, maintaining a steady, measured rhythm. Heads begin to turn. The guests notice the woman in the dark dress interrupting the touching narrative. Whispers ripple through the seated crowd. I ignore them. I reach the wooden stairs leading up to the platform. I climb the steps. Jessica stops speaking mid-sentence. Her artificial smile falters as I cross the polished floorboards. She lowers the microphone, her brow furrowing in genuine confusion. She thinks I am breaking protocol. She expects me to cause a messy, hysterical scene validating her addiction narrative. I close the distance between us. I reach out and wrap my fingers around the metal handle of the microphone. I do not snatch it. I grip it firmly, applying steady downward pressure until her manicured hand releases the device. Jessica steps back, her eyes wide, her lips part to speak but no sound emerges. I turn to face the audience. 150 pairs of eyes stare back at me. The regional bank manager sits at a premium table near the front, swirling an amber liquid in a crystal glass. I raise the microphone to my mouth. I do not raise my volume. I keep my vocal delivery dead calm. My pitch is even devoid of tears or manufactured hysteria. I speak with the clinical precision of an auditor delivering a final financial verdict. I welcome everyone to the 10-year anniversary gala. I thank them for taking the time to celebrate my sister and my brother-in-law tonight. I let the standard greeting settle over the room. Then I drop the foundation out from under the event. I inform the guests that they are partaking in a very special celebration. I explain that the imported caviar, the premium spirits, the live entertainment, and the venue rental were not funded by a successful real estate empire. I tell them they are drinking champagne purchased with a $2,400,000 medical settlement stolen from a crippled 6-year-old girl. The silence that follows is profound. It is the type of quiet that happens when oxygen is suddenly sucked out of an enclosed space. Waiters freeze holding silver trays mid-air. The bank manager lowers his drink. The wealthy investors exchange confused, nervous glances. The stillness lasts for 3 seconds. Then the matriarch shatters the quiet. Evelyn leaps up from her chair at the VIP table. Her emerald dress rustles loudly. Her face contorts into a mask of ugly desperation. She points a trembling finger at me. She screams for the security guards. She projects her voice across the ballroom, abandoning her curated upper-class persona. She yells that I am a delusional addict. She announces to her peers that I am experiencing a severe withdrawal episode. She begs the crowd not to listen to my paranoid ramblings, claiming I sneaked out of a rehabilitation center to ruin the milestone celebration. Her counterattack is swift and predictable. She is playing the exact card she prepared. The audience wavers. I can see the pity forming in the eyes of the guests. They want to believe Evelyn. They want to believe the beautiful bride and the wealthy parents over the pale, uninvited interloper interrupting their dinner. I do not argue with my mother. I do not shout over her frantic declarations. Arguing implies a debate, and there is no debate tonight. There is only evidence. I reach into the side pocket of my gown. I retrieve my smartphone. My thumb hovers over the illuminated screen. The wireless connection to the audiovisual control table is still active. The massive white projector canvas hangs suspended right behind Jessica. I look down at Evelyn. I tap the screen mirror icon. The dark canvas bursts into brilliant, blinding light. The sudden illumination casts a harsh glow over my sister, standing frozen on the stage. A collective gasp ripples through the dining tables as the high-definition image appears overhead. It is not a family photograph. It is a scanned copy of an official hospital document. I enlarge the image using my fingers on the touch screen, ensuring the text is readable from the back row. It is the emergency room contact log from the night of my endometriosis excision procedure. The date stamp reads 3 days ago. The timestamp shows 11 o'clock at night. I read the projected words into the microphone, letting the clinical medical terminology echo through the speakers. The record states the patient woke up alone in the recovery ward. It states the nursing staff attempted to contact the designated emergency proxies Richard and Evelyn Mitchell 6 separate times. Then I read the final highlighted sentence marking their ultimate betrayal. Family declined to respond. I look at the bank manager. I look at the investors. I ask the crowd why a loving mother who claims her daughter is a struggling addict in need of support would refuse to pick up the phone when the surgical ward called. I ask why a family so devoted to my health left me sitting in a wheelchair with fresh stitches stranded at midnight. Evelyn opens and closes her mouth. She looks like a fish suffocating on a dry dock. The pity in the room evaporates, replaced by uncomfortable scrutiny. The guests are accustomed to charity galas and polite society gossip. They are not equipped to handle documented medical neglect projected onto a 20-foot screen. The banking executive leans forward, setting his glass down on the white tablecloth. He is a financial underwriter. He reads risk for a living. The document on the screen is an official medical record. It is not an emotional opinion. It is a verifiable fact. The cognitive dissonance is taking root in his mind. If the Mitchell family lied about my whereabouts tonight, he is wondering what else they might be hiding in their ledgers. Jessica tries to block the projector beam. She steps sideways, trying to shield the display, but the light washes over her beaded dress, projecting the word declined right across her chest. She reaches for the microphone, but I pivot, shielding the device with my body. I remind her that her scheduled speaking time is over. My audit has the floor. The medical log proves their moral bankruptcy. It dismantles the social shield they built to protect themselves. Now I must prove their financial crimes. I tell the silent audience that the hospital abandonment was not an accident. It was a calculated isolation tactic. I tap my phone screen again, preparing to transition from emotional neglect to federal wire fraud. The public execution has commenced and I am just getting started. I swipe my thumb across the glowing glass of my phone. The high-definition image on the 20-foot canvas behind my sister shifts. The emergency room contact log vanishes into the digital ether. A scanned copy of a faded banking authorization form takes its place. The header of the document bears the logo of the financial institution that originally held my catastrophic injury settlement. I direct the attention of the silent room to the bottom right corner of the projected page. The signature on the line reads, Katherine Mitchell. I tell the audience to study the penmanship closely. Growing up, my mother obsessed over aesthetic perfection. Evelyn prided herself on her formal calligraphy. She hand-addressed every single holiday card and charity gala invitation mailed from our household. She possessed a very distinct sharp slant on her capital letters and an elaborate looping structure on her lowercase consonants. I swipe the screen again. A split-screen image appears on the canvas. On the left side is the forged bank transfer signature. On the right side is a recent handwritten note Evelyn sent to a country club board member. The sharp slanted capital letters and the elaborate looping lowercases are identical. The pen pressure is an exact match. The crowd murmurs. The sound is low and uneasy. I speak into the microphone explaining that 7 years ago, my parents used that forged signature to drain my $2.4 million medical trust into a private corporate account. I tell them the funds designated to rehabilitate my shattered nerves were stolen to finance the extravagant lifestyle they are currently celebrating. I look at Tyler. He stands near the dessert station holding a crystal plate. His tailored tuxedo suddenly looks like a costume. I swipe to the next exhibit. The screen illuminates with the official federal tax returns for Pelican Bay Development Group. I highlight the line items showing catastrophic net losses year over year. I project the corporate bank reconciliation statements showing a current available balance of less than $12,000. Tyler spent the last decade grooming these exact attendees. He sold them the illusion of a visionary builder flush with liquid capital. Now the truth hangs suspended above his head. The numbers do not lie. The corporate ledger is hollow. I watch the group of older, wealthy gentlemen standing near my brother-in-law. The same men he was soliciting for fresh investments just minutes ago take a synchronized step backward. They distance themselves from the radioactive liability standing in their midst. Tyler is left isolated on the patterned carpet staring at his own ruined financial footprint. But financial ruin is not the final verdict. I tap the audio icon on my display. I bring the silver microphone close to the speaker of my cellular device. I press the play button. The high-quality acoustics of the ballroom amplify the recording I captured less than 15 minutes ago inside the manager office. The sound of Richard speaking echoes off the crystal chandeliers. His gravelly voice fills the room, dripping with contempt and coercion. The guests hear my father threaten to fabricate a psychiatric hold. They hear him promise to call the authorities and have paramedics strap me to a gurney. They listen in stunned silence as he details his plan to transport me to a state facility if I refuse to sign a commercial contract. They hear him weaponize the exact addiction narrative Jessica just sold them from the stage. They hear the undeniable proof that my family isolates and extorts their own blood to cover their corporate debts. A woman in the second row covers her mouth with her hand. The hushed whispers escalate into an audible wave of horror. The polished facade of the Mitchell family shatters into jagged, irreparable pieces. They are exposed not just as thieves, but as predators willing to institutionalize a wounded relative to secure a payday. I swipe to the final exhibit. This is the culmination of their greed. The screen displays the pending $3 million commercial bridge loan application. I highlight the designated guarantor section featuring my stolen credit profile. I magnify the section containing the federal routing numbers. I shift my gaze toward the VIP table near the patio doors. The regional banking executive recognizes the proprietary formatting of his own lending institution. The color drains from his face, leaving him a pale shade of ash. He understands the gravity of the projection better than anyone else in the room. Submitting a fraudulent loan application across state banking lines using stolen identity metrics constitutes federal wire fraud. The executive stands up abruptly. His wooden chair scrapes loudly against the floorboards. He reaches into his suit jacket and retrieves his phone. He knows his career and his institution are in severe jeopardy if he does not distance his bank from this criminal syndicate immediately. He dials a number and walks rapidly toward the exit, refusing to look at Richard. Jessica panics. The poised, radiant bride devolves into a frantic saboteur. She drops her designer bouquet onto the floorboards and dives toward the audiovisual control table. She scrambles behind the velvet curtain and grabs the thick power cables routed into the venue laptop. She yanks the cords free, intending to sever the video feed. The laptop monitor goes black. Jessica exhales a sharp breath, thinking she defeated the presentation. But the 20-foot canvas behind her remains illuminated. The high-resolution bridge loan application still glows bright and unforgiving. Jessica turns around and stares at the projector. The heavy machine is mounted securely to the ceiling grid high above her reach. The system operates on a localized wireless network hub. Physical sabotage of the laptop is useless. She stands on the stage clutching dead cables while her criminal liability remains broadcasted for the world to see. The social execution concludes in under 3 minutes. The elite standing they curated for decades vaporizes into the humid Florida air. The guests sitting at the dining tables stop looking at me with pity or confusion. They turn their focus entirely toward Richard, Evelyn, and Tyler. Hands dive into designer purses and tuxedo pockets. Dozens of smartphones emerge from the crowd. Camera lenses reflect the bright projector light. The attendees begin filming the evidence on the screen, capturing the audio recording playback and the forged documents on high-definition video. The country club elite are documenting the downfall to protect their own reputations and warn their private networks. Richard realizes the room is permanently lost. The social currency he traded on is gone. He locks eyes with Tyler across the sea of recording devices. The extortion failed. The public narrative is dead. The only option remaining for the architect of this fraud is evasion. Richard turns his back on the stage. He signals for Evelyn to follow him. He moves briskly toward the grand foyer, intending to flee the venue before the banking executive makes an official report. But a heavy set of double doors swinging open at the back of the ballroom halts his retreat. The final mechanism of the trap arrives uninvited. The heavy double doors at the back of the ballroom swing open, but Richard does not look toward the exit. His avenue for a quiet escape is gone. The regional banking executive has already slipped into the foyer, clutching his cellular device to report the catastrophic fraud. The realization that his carefully constructed empire is permanently dismantled snaps the final thread of my father's self-control. He turns his back on the lobby and pivots toward the stage. The polished real estate developer vanishes. The predator who bribes officials and intimidates witnesses surfaces in full view. His face is a mask of pure feral rage. He charges down the center aisle. He shoves past a dining table, knocking a crystal centerpiece onto the patterned carpet. The glass shatters, sending water and white roses sprawling across the floorboards. Wealthy guests scramble out of his path. Richard fixes his eyes on me. He intends to use physical force to silence the presentation. He intends to drag me away from the microphone and punish me for exposing his hollow ledger. I stand my ground on the elevated platform. My right hand grips the metal microphone stand. My left hand rests against my dark navy gown, protecting my surgical incisions. I do not flinch as his heavy footsteps pound against the wooden stairs. I knew he would resort to violence the moment his social shield collapsed. I calculated this exact reaction. Before his custom leather shoe touches the second step, a figure steps out from the dark wings of the stage. David materializes from behind the heavy velvet curtain. The forensic attorney does not operate solely behind a desk. Before specializing in asset recovery, David worked as a prosecutor dismantling organized crime syndicates. He understands that desperate men cornered by their own financial ruin often resort to physical harm. He anticipated my father's escalation. Two men in dark tailored suits step out immediately behind David. They are private security contractors hired specifically for this evening. They move with coordinated precision. They intercept Richard at the base of the stairs. One contractor wraps his arms around my father's chest, while the other secures his arms behind his back. Richard thrashes wildly. He shouts incoherent threats, spitting curses into the humid ballroom air. His tuxedo jacket rips at the seam. The country club attendees gasp, shrinking back from the raw physical altercation. David steps forward, standing between the detained patriarch and the platform. He adjusts his gray suit jacket. He looks down at Richard with cool, clinical disdain. But private security is merely a temporary barricade. The true payoff arrives from the grand foyer. The heavy mahogany doors at the back of the venue swing open for a second time. A line of men and women wearing tactical windbreakers enters the opulent dining space. The bright yellow letters printed across their backs read Federal Bureau of Investigation. The ballroom descends into total chaos. Waiters drop their silver trays. The catering staff scatters toward the kitchen's swinging doors. The string quartet musicians pack their expensive instruments and flee the corner alcove. The wealthy investors Tyler spent the last 10 years grooming press themselves against the floral wallpaper, desperate to avoid association with the incoming raid. David tipped off the Economic Crimes Division a full week prior to this gala. He used the digital files I extracted during my midnight audit to build a comprehensive federal dossier. Local police departments require weeks to secure warrants for domestic financial disputes. But Tyler and Richard made a fatal jurisdictional error. The $3 million commercial bridge loan application they submitted targeted a federally insured lending institution. The electronic wire transfers they used to funnel my medical trust into their private shell company crossed state banking lines. Those specific actions elevated their theft from a civil family matter to a string of federal felonies. The lead agent flashes a gold badge. He walks directly toward the dessert station where Tyler stands paralyzed. My brother-in-law looks like a hollow mannequin. He drops his crystal plate. The expensive porcelain shatters against the floor. Tyler raises his hands, surrendering before the agents even issue a verbal command. Two federal officers flank him. They recite his Miranda rights, reciting the specific charges of wire fraud, identity theft, and bank extortion. The sharp metallic click of steel handcuffs snapping shut echoes across the quiet room. The metal binds his wrists together over the sleeves of his expensive tuxedo. They march the visionary developer toward the exit, parading him past the exact investors he intended to defraud. Across the room, another team of agents converges on the stage. The private security contractors step aside, transferring custody of my father to the federal authorities. Richard stops, struggling. The feral rage drains from his face, replaced by the cold, stark reality of a federal indictment. He realizes his wealth cannot bribe a federal agent. His intimidation tactics are useless against the Department of Justice. The officers secure his wrists in steel cuffs. They guide him away from the platform. He does not look back at me. He stares straight ahead, walking into the ruin he built with his own hands. The stage is clear. The predators are neutralized, but the family dynamic has one final act to play out. Jessica watches her husband led away in chains. The golden child realizes the endless European vacations, the designer wardrobes, and the gated community lifestyle are permanently terminated. She drops to the floorboards. Her custom beaded gown pools around her knees in a glittering heap. She buries her face in her hands, sobbing hysterically. Her performance is pitch perfect. She wails that she had no idea. She screams into the empty space, claiming Tyler managed all the finances and kept her entirely in the dark. She begs the remaining guests to believe she is an innocent victim of her husband's secret greed. It is a brilliant theatrical lie. I audited the corporate tax returns. I saw the direct wire transfers funneling thousands of dollars from the shell company into her personal checking account every single month. She signed the joint tax returns. She knew exactly where the capital originated. She just chose to ignore the bleeding sister funding her luxury. I look down at her crying on the floor. I feel zero pity. She traded her sibling for a yacht. Now she gets to sink with the ship. Then Evelyn approaches the stairs. My mother does not run. She walks slowly, navigating the shattered glass and discarded linen napkins littering the carpet. The emerald silk of her dress looks heavy, dragging along the ground. The pristine upper-class matriarch is gone. Her elaborate hairstyle is coming undone. Her expensive mascara runs down her cheeks in dark, jagged lines. She stops at the base of the platform. She looks up at me standing next to the microphone. She does not yell. She does not hurl insults. She realizes the social execution is complete, and the federal prison sentences are imminent. She resorts to the ultimate form of emotional extortion. She reaches her hands outward, grasping the empty air between us. Tears spill over her eyelashes. Her chin trembles. She calls my name. Her voice is soft, broken, and laced with a toxic vulnerability. She begs me to call off the federal agents. She pleads with me to talk to David and undo the damage. She tells me that Richard is getting older and his heart cannot handle the stress of a criminal trial. She says Tyler is a good man who just made a series of bad business calculations. Then she plays her final card. She looks deep into my eyes and begs me to remember that despite everything, we are still family. The word hangs in the humid air. Family. She uses the term as a universal shield. She expects the biological connection to erase decades of neglect, theft, and psychological abuse. She expects the daughter she abandoned in a hospital wheelchair to rescue her from a federal prison sentence. She wants me to absorb the consequences of her crimes simply because we share the same last name. The physical pain in my abdomen flares, reminding me of the surgical wounds wrapped tightly beneath my dress. I look at the woman who drove her vehicle off an embankment and chose to cover up her intoxication rather than protect her bleeding child. I look at the mother who watched me struggle to pay for basic groceries while she funneled my medical settlement into country club memberships. The confrontation reaches its absolute peak. I hold the microphone. The remaining guests hold their breath, waiting to see if the broken daughter will submit to the weeping mother. The federal agents pause near the doors, securing the perimeter. The entire room waits for my final verdict. I look down at Evelyn Mitchell. I prepare to sever the biological chain forever. The ballroom remains suspended in a fragile silence. Federal agents secure the perimeter near the exit doors. The soft clinking of steel handcuffs echoes from the grand foyer as Tyler and Richard are escorted toward the waiting transport vehicles. The flashing red and blue lights from the law enforcement cruisers outside bleed through the tall glass windows, casting rhythmic shadows across the patterned carpet. I stand near the edge of the elevated platform. The silver microphone feels warm against my palm. I look down at Evelyn. My mother kneels at the base of the wooden stairs. Tears trace uneven paths down her powdered cheeks, ruining her pristine makeup. Her emerald silk gown pools around her knees. She holds her hands out toward me, palms facing upward in a gesture of desperate surrender. She repeats her plea. Her voice shakes, carrying a fragile vulnerability she has never displayed in my presence. She begs me to remember the good times. She references family vacations we took when I was a child. She tries to conjure a revisionist history where she was a devoted caretaker. She asks me to look past the financial discrepancies and show mercy for the sake of our shared blood. She claims that sending her husband to a penitentiary will destroy the foundation of our kinship. I study her face. I search her eyes for a single ounce of genuine remorse. I look for regret regarding the pain she caused. I search for an apology concerning the night she drove intoxicated and shattered my leg. I look for guilt regarding the theft of my medical settlement. I find none of those things. The tears spilling down her face are not born from sorrow. They are the panicked tears of a socialite realizing her curated empire is turning to ash. She is mourning the loss of her country club membership. She is weeping for the luxury cars and the catered galas. She is crying because the audience standing in this room will never look at her with reverence again. She views me as a final lifeline to salvage her tarnished reputation. I lower the microphone. The public broadcast is finished. I do not need the amplification to deliver the final verdict. I speak directly to the woman kneeling on the floorboards. I tell her that biology is a starting point, not a binding contract. I explain that sharing a genetic lineage does not grant permission for extortion. I remind her that true kinship requires mutual protection. She forfeited her claim to that title 26 years ago when she bribed a tow truck driver instead of holding my hand in the emergency room. Evelyn shakes her head. She reaches for the hem of my dark navy gown. She tries to grab the silk fabric to pull me closer. I take a deliberate step backward. I refuse to let her touch me. I deliver the closing entry of our ledger. I keep my tone even and devoid of malice. I tell her I am merely honoring the boundary she established 3 nights ago. I remind her of the phone call the hospital charge nurse placed at midnight. I remind her of the exact sentence she spoke into the receiver when asked to collect her recovering daughter. I quote her own words back to her. I tell her I am not her problem anymore. The syllables hang in the quiet space between us. The rejection lands with the definitive finality of a gavel striking wood. Evelyn lowers her hands. Her shoulders slump forward. The toxic lifeline is officially severed. She understands there is no negotiation remaining. The emotional manipulation tactics that governed my childhood hold zero power over the woman standing on this stage. I turn away from the stairs. I walk toward the audio-visual control table where the lead federal agent coordinates the raid. The officer wears a dark windbreaker and a serious expression. I reach into my canvas tote bag. I retrieve the final piece of the operation. I hand the 5 black leatherette dossiers to the investigator. The folders contain the comprehensive forensic accounting trail. I provide the forged bank transfers, the fraudulent tax returns, the commercial loan applications, and the medical discharge records. I inform him that David organized the digital files, but these physical copies contain the original hospital archive documents. The agent accepts the heavy stack of evidence. He nods respectfully, acknowledging the meticulous preparation. He assures me the Department of Justice possesses more than enough probable cause to secure formal indictments against all participating parties. He says an assigned prosecutor will contact my legal counsel on Monday morning to formalize the witness statements. I thank the officer for his swift intervention. My role in the investigation is complete. The burden of justice transfers from my shoulders to the federal court system. I turn toward the center aisle. I begin the long walk toward the exit. The journey across the ballroom is a study in stark contrasts. The opulent gala is a ruined wasteland. I navigate around discarded linen napkins and overturned crystal centerpieces. The wealthy investors part like a yielding tide, allowing me to pass. No one attempts to speak to me. No one offers a hollow apology. The country club elite avert their eyes, unable to process the destruction they just witnessed. I pass the towering ice sculpture. The interlocking swans are melting under the heat of the crystal chandeliers. Small droplets of water cascade down the carved wings, pooling on the silver display tray. The grand illusion is dissolving into a mundane puddle. I reflect on the cinematic nature of the evening. In a traditional movie, this exit would feature a slow-motion stride accompanied by a dramatic orchestral score. The protagonist would toss a witty parting remark over her shoulder while the villains screamed in defeat. Reality offers no such theatrics. There is only the quiet rhythmic sound of my own footsteps against the patterned carpet. The only soundtrack is the steady beating of my heart. The absence of drama is profound. It feels clean. It feels authentic. I reach the heavy mahogany front doors. I press my hands against the polished wood and push them open. I step over the threshold. The transition hits my senses instantly. The freezing, sterile air conditioning of the venue interior gives way to the thick, warm Florida humidity. The night air wraps around me like a heavy blanket. The scent of nearby saltwater mixes with the aroma of damp earth and blooming jasmine. A chorus of crickets chirps from the manicured landscaping bordering the cobblestone driveway. I stop near the edge of the valet station. I take a slow, deep breath, filling my lungs with the heavy tropical air. I wait for the crushing weight of guilt to arrive. Society conditions children to feel immense remorse for abandoning their parents, regardless of the circumstances. I expect a wave of sorrow to pull me under. The sorrow never materializes, the guilt remains absent. Instead, a unique physical sensation washes over my body. The sharp radiating heat of the localized infection is gone, defeated by the antibiotics racing through my bloodstream. The angry, burning pain in my lower abdomen recedes into a dull, manageable soreness. The surgical glue holding my incisions together flexes, accommodating my movements. The medical procedure I endured 3 days ago removed a parasitic tissue feeding on my internal organs. The social execution I performed tonight removed a parasitic dynamic feeding on my future. The physical excision mirrors the emotional severance. Both operations required immense pain. Both procedures demanded a period of agonizing recovery. But the toxic elements are permanently extracted. The rot is gone. David waits near the base of the driveway. His gray sedan idles quietly near the curb. The forensic attorney stands outside the vehicle holding the passenger door open. He offers a small, reassuring nod. He does not ask how I feel. He understands the profound necessity of silence in the aftermath of a war. I walk down the cobblestone path. I slide into the leather passenger seat. The interior of the car smells like clean upholstery and old paper. I reach across my shoulder and pull the seatbelt over my chest, snapping the metal buckle into place. David closes the door. He walks around the hood and slides behind the steering wheel. He shifts the transmission into drive. The sedan pulls away from the curb, merging onto the dark tree-lined avenue leading away from the country club. I turn my head toward the passenger window. I watch the glowing facade of the luxury venue shrink in the side mirror. The flashing lights of the federal cruisers fade into distant colored blurs. The sirens remain silent. The heavy canvas tote bag rests on the floorboards near my feet. It is empty. The burden of the past 26 years is no longer mine to carry. I do not owe anyone my credit profile. I do not owe anyone a false apology. I do not owe my silence to protect a fragile aesthetic. The dark road stretches out ahead, illuminated only by the sweeping beams of the headlights. For the first time since a drunk driver shattered my leg on a lonely interstate, the trajectory of my life belongs entirely to me. I lean my head against the cool glass of the window and watch the Tampa skyline rise in the distance. The long night is over. The dawn is waiting. 6 months pass. The calendar turns from a humid autumn to a mild spring. I stand in the kitchen of a house I own. The surgical scars on my abdomen are no longer red, angry lines. They have faded into pale silver threads. My body moves without the sharp pulling sensation that defined my early recovery. The chronic nerve pain from my childhood remains a hum in the background, but it no longer dictates my daily schedule. The Department of Justice moved with terrifying efficiency. Federal prosecutors do not offer leniency to men who use stolen identities to defraud interstate banking institutions. Tyler attempted to broker a plea agreement. He offered to testify against my father in exchange for a reduced sentence. The prosecutors declined the offer. They already possessed the digitized ledgers, the forged bank transfers, and the recorded extortion from the country club manager office. They did not need a cooperating witness because they possessed an airtight paper trail. A federal judge sentenced Tyler to 96 months in a minimum security penitentiary. Richard received a similar term. The federal penal system does not grant early parole for good behavior. My father will spend the remainder of his 70s wearing a standardized uniform, eating cafeteria food, and answering to a warden. The real estate visionary and the country club patriarch are now just assigned inmate numbers. Jessica attempted to divorce Tyler the moment the handcuffs clicked shut. She hired a ruthless family law attorney hoping to secure half of the marital assets before the government could intervene. Her legal strategy failed. The federal investigators proved every single dollar funneling her luxury lifestyle derived directly from stolen capital. The court froze her personal checking accounts. She walked away from a 10-year marriage with nothing but the clothes hanging in her closet. The government ordered a total asset forfeiture. Pelican Bay Development Group was dismantled piece by piece. The authorities seized the luxury vehicles, the offshore holding accounts, and the pristine, planned community residence Tyler shared with my sister. The federal bankruptcy court assigned a trustee to liquidate the remaining physical assets. David worked tirelessly alongside the assigned investigators. He traced the hidden capital my family scattered across various shell corporations. Through meticulous forensic accounting, my attorney managed to recover a significant portion of my original medical settlement. The funds were legally restored to my name and placed into a secure independent account shielded from any external claims. The financial collapse triggered a brutal social exile for the women left behind. Tampa high society operates on a strict currency of wealth and optics. The moment the federal agents walked into the anniversary gala, Evelyn and Jessica became radioactive. The country club board revoked their membership, citing a morality clause in the bylaws. The charity committees stopped returning their calls. The wealthy friends who attended the yacht parties vanished overnight. My mother and my sister now reside in a cramped two-bedroom apartment situated next to a noisy commercial highway in Clearwater. I know this detail because Evelyn attempted to mail me a letter last month. The envelope featured her distinct looping calligraphy. I did not open the correspondence. I fed the sealed paper directly into a cross-cut shredder. There is nothing she can write that will alter the past. I do not require her apologies, and I refuse to read her justifications. Closure does not come from the people who caused the trauma. Closure is a decision you make alone in a quiet room. My auditing career flourished in the aftermath of the trial. Firms value an accountant who can spot a fraudulent ledger from a mile away. I set my own hours and choose my own clients. I purchased a modest single-story home in St. Petersburg. The property sits on a quiet brick-paved street, shaded by ancient oak trees draped in Spanish moss. I did not buy the house to project status. I bought it because the backyard features a sprawling garden. I spend my weekends digging my hands into the dark soil, planting hibiscus and gardenias. Tending to the earth provides a tangible sense of growth. I nurture the roots and watch the stems reach toward the sun. It is Sunday evening. The fading sunlight casts a warm golden hue across the wooden dining table positioned near the bay window. The table is set for 3. I lift a ceramic bowl of roasted vegetables from the kitchen counter and carry it to the dining room. The front doorbell chimes. I wipe my hands on a cotton towel and walk to the entryway. I unlock the door. Sarah stands on the front porch holding a bottle of dry red wine. David stands beside his sister carrying a bakery box filled with fresh pastries. They step inside, bringing a wave of easy laughter and genuine warmth into my home. We gather around the table. The conversation flows without hidden agendas or underlying tension. We do not discuss federal indictments or forged documents. We talk about local politics, new restaurant openings, and the novels we are currently reading. Sarah pours the wine. David passes the serving dishes. I look at the 2 people sitting in my dining room. They do not share my genetic lineage. We do not share childhood memories or a biological surname. But they showed up when my blood relatives left me stranded in a sterile hospital corridor. They stood beside me while I dismantled a corrupt syndicate. They represent the family I chose rather than the one I merely survived. The concept of loyalty used to feel like a heavy chain wrapped around my neck. My parents weaponized the idea of kinship, using it to demand compliance and excuse their theft. I spent my entire youth believing I owed them my silence because they provided a roof over my head. I equated abuse with ordinary family dynamics. The evening concludes. Sarah and David help clear the ceramic plates. They offer warm embraces before walking out to their respective vehicles. I stand on the front porch and wave goodbye. The street is peaceful. A gentle breeze rustles the oak leaves overhead. I walk back inside and lock the front door. I turn off the kitchen lights. I walk through the quiet hallway toward my bedroom. The silence in this house is not heavy or isolating. It is a protective barrier. The absence of drama is the greatest luxury I have ever acquired. I realize now that setting boundaries is not an act of cruelty. Walking away from toxic individuals does not make you cold or unforgiving. It makes you a survivor. You do not owe your health, your credit profile, or your sanity to people who treat your existence as a blank check. They thought they could bury me in a hospital room. They believed my physical vulnerability and their curated social narrative would keep me trapped in the dark forever. They assumed I would fold under the weight of their manipulation. Instead, they handed me the shovel. I used their own tools to unearth the truth and expose the rot hiding beneath their pristine floorboards. I balanced the ledger and secured my own future. If you found out your family was using your name to commit federal fraud, would you have warned them before the FBI arrived or let them fall? Let me know in the comments. We grow up immersed in a culture that sells us a very specific picture-perfect dream. From a young age, we are conditioned to believe that family is our ultimate, unbreakable safety net. It is the idealized Thanksgiving dinner, the curated holiday cards, the unconditional love that is supposed to catch us the moment we stumble. But what happens when that safety net is the very thing pulling you under? Katherine's journey is far more than a cautionary tale about a stolen medical trust or a forged signature on a commercial loan. It serves as a stark mirror held up to a distinctly American phenomenon, our relentless, dangerous obsession with the pristine facade. We live in a society that too often rewards the appearance of success over the reality of integrity. Her parents and her sister traded their fundamental humanity for country club memberships, leased luxury vehicles, and the fleeting admiration of wealthy strangers. Worse still, they draped their profound betrayals in the sacred language of familial duty. They expected the very child they broke to silently foot the bill for their illusions. The hardest lesson Katherine had to learn, a lesson that resonates deeply through the silent struggles of so many, is that biology is merely a genetic starting point. It is not a binding, lifelong contract. In our culture, we place an immense, crushing burden on the concept of family loyalty. We are repeatedly told to forgive, to forget to turn the other cheek, and to keep the peace at absolutely all costs. But Katherine's survival required her to understand a radical truth: peace purchased with your own destruction is simply extortion in disguise. She did not find her freedom through a chaotic, tearful screaming match. She found it in the cold, clinical clarity of a balanced ledger. She realized that excising toxic blood from your life is not an act of cruelty. It is the ultimate necessary act of self-preservation. Sometimes the most empowering decision a person can make is to look at the people who gave them their name and quietly walk away, leaving the heavy baggage on their doorstep. These are the hidden, complicated realities we so rarely discuss in the open light of day. It is exactly why we continue to share these powerful narratives. If you recognized a fragment of your own silent battles in Katherine's resilience, I invite you to subscribe and follow our channel, Elderly Stories. We are dedicated to exploring these complex, often painful, but ultimately liberating truths about family aging and the crucial boundaries that save our lives. Tonight, as you slide the deadbolt on your own front door and turn off the kitchen lights, take a lingering moment to look around your quiet home. Think about the people you have willingly allowed inside your walls over the years. We spend so much of our lives meticulously building fortresses to keep the monsters out completely, forgetting that sometimes the most dangerous people in our lives already hold a spare key on their keyring. When the phone eventually rings in the dead of the night, in that quiet space between sleep and waking, you have to ask yourself a terrifying question. Are the people on the other end calling to make sure you are safe? Or are they just checking to see if you finally left the door unlocked?